Ready? All right, welcome back to Fabrication 101. It's so nice to have you guys back out in the shop with me today. So we're doing something a little different. We're not working on the Bronco today. I decided I needed a shop press to do a few things in the future. So instead of going out and buying one, because frankly money's a little tight and time I've got lots of right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and build my own shop press. I looked around in some of my material that I've had laying around for a while, and I think I found just about everything I need to do this. So I went ahead and kind of roughed out a quick plan, dug out my old bottle jack, which is not old. It looks brand new, practically is, because it's about a year old. It's only been used about once. So I figured putting it in a shop press is not a bad idea. So I've got a few more pieces of this heavy angle iron to cut up, because that's going to make the legs of my shop press, and then we'll see what happens next. All the angle iron is cut, and now for probably one of the probably the only really critical part of this whole build is going to be getting all of the holes for the pins that support the table drilled and put into place. And so I've got an idea, a plan I think that will work to make sure they're all as consistent as possible. So let me show you what I'm doing here. So what I've got is I've got two of them, and I'm going to line them up on the bottom edge, clamp them nice and tight so they don't move, and then I'm going to go ahead and drill a 1/4 inch pilot hole through both of them into each of my spots. And then I'll separate them, and I'll take the other two pieces and then use these as the pilots to drill the 1.25 inch holes with my hole saw. Well, it's the next day. I had a little bit of an interruption yesterday, so I didn't get very far on the press project. We're going to continue working on that today, but the interruption was a good interruption because the roll cage is back in the Bronco. Had my brother come and help me out yesterday. We put the roll cage back in. It's not welded in yet, it's just set in there. And then went ahead and put the windshield back on as well. So I'm super excited, super pleased about it. I think it looks a lot better with the cage in the Bronco. So I forgot to turn the camera on yesterday. I got one hole done. It's actually not going too bad. It would be nice to have a better tool than this, but this drill turns quite a bit slower than my drill press. So it actually shoots right through there fairly well. And that's an old hole saw, so if I put my new one on there, it should go pretty smooth. So let's get this set back up and continue drilling some holes. One down. Unfortunately, still have one more to go, and while that didn't go too bad, I'm not looking forward to having to do the next one, but we'll get it done and then we'll check back with you in just a second. Well, all of our holes are drilled in those things now. They're both all done. So now I'm going to take a break from working on those, work on the header bar for the top of the press. You can see in here I've got this piece up here. I'm going to make that out of this piece of 4-inch quarter wall square tube. But in order to keep this thing from collapsing when I'm pressing, I'm going to put a hole through it right in the middle where the bottle jack is going to go. And then I'm going to put in a chunk of this 2-inch solid bar that I've had forever. I don't even remember where that came from, but that should keep that tube from compressing. And then I'll probably put a little chunk of some 2-inch round tube as a way to keep the top of the jack from sliding in and out. And then we'll be ready to start getting everything cleaned up and kind of start piecing this thing together. All right, got that all welded up, and you can see I also went ahead and cleaned up and beveled these edges on the ends here. While that is cooling, I need to start getting those cleaned up and kind of tacked together and then ready to be joined with this big guy here. So Well, one leg is done, and there's the other one, sort of almost done. It just needs to, I need to clip off those corners on the bottom foot. I made the feet on the bottom are 3 feet wide because this press is a little taller than normal. It should be about 70 inches total. I decided I want a little bit more height on it, so if I ever have to press axle bearings or something like that in it, have a little bit more clearance to the ground. So it is just tacked together for now. I wanted to get the bottom feet in, and I want to get the piece the header to go across the top in before I weld this, because I'm concerned that if I just weld these will pull in here, and I'll end up with a crooked press. So I got to cut the piece that's going to go across the bottom, and then I'll be ready to square it up and tack it all together. We'll see how that goes. So this piece is going to be, I guess I would call it the footer, since I call the other part the header. One thing I kind of want to show real quick, and I see this a lot with my students. I always like to try and measure from the saw blade. I put my tape measure right up against the saw blade, and then right up against it, and then I pull it back, and then I check my measurement. And that way I don't have to take into consideration the thickness of the blade. I should get a nice accurate cut. I'm not worried about trying to match up with a fat Sharpie mark or something like that. This works whether you're using a chop saw or a big band saw like this. It works really well to just measure directly from the blade. Unless you're trying to do a lot of repetitive cuts, I feel like this is a much more efficient way to get these cut. So let's go ahead and get this piece cut. Get that thing to stay up there. Okay, it is a bit precarious because there's nothing, it's actually just standing there on its own right now. What I did is I pushed both of my feet up against this big piece of 1/4 inch plate that I've got laying on the floor. I squared each side to that plate, and then I double checked all my measurements, made sure everything's square. You can see it is sitting on one side is on a screwdriver just to keep it from tipping. I'm just going to tack the bottoms on the top corners for now, and then I'm going to put the header bar in, and then once that's tacked into place, I'll go ahead and square everything up. Well, it's all tacked together, sort of, barely tacked. It is a little out of square. I took all the clamps off. You can see from this little bubble level, it's not quite perfectly level. When I put the level on the footer, it actually looks perfect. So I'm going to try to level it to that. But I think part of it is it's a little out of square. So if I take my big square here and put it up here, I don't know if you guys can see that, but if I come down here where it's tight, if it'll focus, it's tight there, and then if you come down here, there's a gap. But that matches my measurements, my rough out of square measurements. So if I take my strap again, and I pull from this corner down to this corner, it should square up my frame. So let's give that a shot. Okay, so it's all fully welded, or at least as welded as I think it needs to be. You can see down the sides here, I went ahead and did some stitch welds down the side. The top ones right at the edge. The ones in the middle are about 12 inches centered on center. They're about 4-inch long welds, and one of the tricks that I do is I put a tack weld where I know where I want to stop, and then I weld down to my tack weld, because tack welds are significantly easier to see than Sharpie marks. Now, if you were going to be fully welding this and having it seal at some point, you would not want to do that. You would need to feather out your tack welds, because otherwise you'd most likely would end up with leaks where those tack welds are. So next thing we got to do is build I guess I call it the table that goes across there. That's going to be relatively simple. It's just 2 pieces of channel iron with a couple of spacers in the middle. So let's get those knocked out real quick. We'll get that put in, and then we'll start working on whatever this piece is, the press piece where the vise sits, or where the bottle jack sits. So this is what I've got to build my table. It's just some 4-inch channel, and then I've just cut a couple more pieces of that 2 by 3-inch square tube or rectangle tube that I'm going to stick in there like that, on each about 6 inches in. I don't know, I just picked a random number. Seemed like it makes sense to me. I will get it tacked together first, and then put it in, make sure it goes in, and then I'll pull it back out and get it all fully welded. Table is in. It looks pretty good, pretty solid, I would say. It does wobble just a little bit. I'm sure my holes aren't perfect. These pins are actually just a piece of an old weightlifting bar. They're about 1 1/8 inches in diameter, and they are solid. So I think this should be pretty strong. Next thing to work on is the piece that the jack will sit on here. What I think I'm going to use is a piece of 3-inch wide 1 by 3 that I have left over from my fenders. I'll go ahead and put this inside of it as the press point. And then I think I'm going to go ahead and cut up a chunk of this 1/4 by 12-inch plate that's on the floor, and put that underneath the bottle jack, just to have a bigger footprint for the jack to sit on. And then I'll have to make some little ends to keep it centered inside of the frame. So well, there it is, sort of. Everything's in there, everything fits the way it should. The top of the jack has got a little bit of room to spare. Now I gotta figure out how to put the springs I bought in there. I don't think I'm gonna mess with them too much. This is the spring I bought. I think what I'm gonna do is take this chain, that's some old chain that I have. I'm gonna cut off just the very kind of the top, the end of a couple of links, and then I'll go ahead and weld them to here and up to here on both sides, and then we should be done. Finito, as they say. All right, so she's all done. Looks pretty good. I'm super pleased with the way it's come out so far. One issue, the separation between these holes is about 4 inches center to center. I could put a hole in this, and that being at 2 inches would give me a 2-inch option, so it basically give me like it would be like the holes were every 2 inches. I don't know if I'm going to do that. I feel like this sitting on this channel like that is quite a bit stronger, so we'll see. I don't know. I do need to get some additional pieces for this. I don't have any good arbor plates to put down here to press against, so that is something I need to order. And one of the main reasons I went ahead and built this thing is Swag Off-Road makes a press brake that's also a finger brake for a press like this, and I think I'm going to go ahead and make the investment in one of those here shortly. And I also needed a way to press some dimple dies. I do have a set of dimple dies, and I do want to be able to do some dimpling on the Bronco in the future here. So I needed a way to press my dimple dies, and I think this will actually work really well for that as soon as I get some good solid arbor plates. In the meantime, I do feel like I need to press something before I can finish this video off, and so what I've grabbed, I went ahead and found myself a bang can that'll fit in here, and you'll notice I did have to put a spacer under there because it just doesn't quite fit at the last setting. So either way, I think we can press this. We'll go ahead and start pushing down here, and there she goes. So it is a functional press. Here we go. This will be the next big YouTube channel. Oh wait, we already have the hydraulic press channel. But so far so good. That looks pretty great. I'm super pleased with how that came out. Tune in next video. We're going to be bringing the Bronco back in the garage to work on it some more. Before I do that though, I need to figure out a home for this thing, and I'm not quite sure where I'm going to put it quite yet. I think I'm about to stick it over in that corner where my bench grinder is, even though, because I don't hardly ever use that bench grinder. I think that would be a good place to put this press for now. So before I get to that, I want to thank you guys for tuning in to another video on Fabrication 101. I really appreciate it. Send me a comment down below. What do you think of my press here? If there was anything you would have done differently. I would like to point out that all of this, with the exception of these springs, is stuff I already had. So I did not go out and buy any of this material. A lot of this, even this big angle iron, is stuff I've had for a long time, 10 years or more. So I'm glad to finally get a use for this stuff. Tune in next time, see what we're up to. Thank you so much again for tuning in. Make sure you give me a like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. And I will see you on the next video of Fabrication 101. And in the meantime, do me a favor, do yourself a favor, and go build something.